seniors. Resuming debate, the Honourable Member for Scarborough-Rouge Park.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm delighted to speak to you this afternoon from the unceded lands of the Algonquin people, and I want to acknowledge that I represent Scarborough-Rouge Park, the lands of many Indigenous nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit. I want to first thank the people of Scarborough-Rouge Park for their incredible support. I was able to secure over 63% of votes in the last election, and this is my third time representing the great people of Scarborough-Rouge Park. Of course, I could not have done this without the incredible volunteers I had, over 600 volunteers who worked day and night. We knocked on over 115,000 doors. They inspired me greatly, the young men and women who came out day and night, and therefore I had to set a very high bar for the type of campaign that I ran. And I want to say it was a very positive campaign. It's a campaign in which it was not about taking down the opposition. It's about presenting a very positive vision of Canada, and I was very proud to be able to do that throughout the campaign. And I want to take this time to acknowledge those who are part of my core team, including Shauna, David, Waleed, Gavin, Piyush, Ella, and Ojani and Asma, who worked diligently to get the results that we got. My E-Day chair, Gautaman, and campaign managers, Joshua and Doreen. They were incredible in their efforts. I also want to thank the donors, those who cooked, those who put up signs, those who scrutineered, those who did everything possible to make this election a success, including the very responsible staff at Elections Canada. Endeavors such as politics involves the entire family, and I would be remiss if I don't acknowledge the steadfast support of my loving wife, Harini, and my children, Sahana and Bhairavi, who, as every election comes and goes, seem to be getting older and wiser, I might add, but who continue to guide me in all the things I do, including my mother, who has always been my rock and my strength. I want to congratulate all of my colleagues here who've been elected and re-elected, and many for the first time, and their families for their sacrifices. And I'm here now to speak on reply to the speech from the throne, and I will be splitting my time with my dear friend from Oakville, North Burlington. The primary focus of our government over the past 2 years has been to end the fight on COVID. And this is a very important fight that has taken many lives, many Canadian lives, but we know that we're in the forefront of leading this fight, including the procurement of vaccines, making sure that those in Canada are vaccinated. Right now, we're at 82.3% of those who are eligible have had their first dose, and 79.6% having their second dose. These are people over the age of 5, so which is an incredible feat for any country. And we are also in the cusp of administering the third dose to Canadians. But this fight's always been undertaken by frontline and essential workers, many from very marginalized communities, and I want to thank them and acknowledge their incredible efforts for the past 2 years. The Scarborough, thank you. In my community, the Scarborough Health Network, the Taibu Community Health Centre, the City of Toronto, led by Dr. Eileen Davila, and others have been instrumental in this fight, and I would be remiss if I don't thank them and acknowledge them and their families for their service. Of course, some of the things that have been highlighted over the last 2 years include mental health. That is something that we know. We've lost many people due to mental health over the past few years, but particularly during COVID. I've had a very dear friend who took his life, and I know many others are struggling. And this speech from the throne does directly respond to the issues of mental health and addiction. Long-term care homes have been a significant challenge. In my riding itself, we had, in one particular institution, we had over 53 people that died, including one personal support worker. And this speech from the throne responds to that. Just last week, I had the privilege of visiting the Tony Stacey Center. It was initially built as a veterans home for seniors. I was able to meet with their chair and some of their staff. There are long-term care homes across the country who are in similar state of disrepair. But because of the hard work of their management, their staff, and universal care, they have been able to pull through with minimal loss of life. And that's really a sad reflection of the state of our long-term care homes. This is an area where the federal government has a very important role to play, and one that is outlined in this budget. In this speech from the throne, rather. As we move in, I want to talk about the resilience of our economy. There are a number of things that we need to do, but first and foremost, it's heartening to see that our jobs that we had lost during the pandemic, we've been able to recover at 100%. Our GDP is close to pre-pandemic levels, and by all accounts, our economy is starting to throttle in full force. But there are very important lessons from the pandemic that we need to learn, including the need for childcare. And in our case, we proposed $10 a day childcare. I believe 8 provinces have now signed on, with the exception of Ontario and New Brunswick. And these are very important initiatives. This is something so fundamental to families. I know when when our kids were younger, it was such a difficult choice in terms of work, in terms of balancing work life and other things in life, including, and most importantly at that time, childcare. So this is something that will transform families, will transform women and the ability of women to be in the workforce in full form. So I'm very excited about this, and I hope that the province of Ontario will soon sign on to $10 a day childcare. And of course, we've heard about housing affordability and the costs of living, but with the measures that were taking place, that we're introducing here, including childcare and incentives for first-time home buyers, as well as rent-to-own programs, we know that both of these will support families in Scarborough-Rouge Park and everyone around Canada. The need for bold climate action is so prevalent as we see floods in both of our coasts, on the east and west coast, as well as very erratic temperatures across the world. We know that some countries may not even exist in a decade or two. And as a result, the need to accelerate the fight on climate change is so important. And locally, I want to just highlight a couple of things that's happening in my riding of Scarborough-Rouge Park. The federal government, just earlier this year, we committed to investing $2.26 billion towards the Scarborough subway extension. It's the single largest investment of any government, any federal government in Scarborough. It's a very important fight. It's a very important tool for the fight against climate change, as well as the need for the extension of the Scarborough LRT East to Malvern. The City of Toronto has put in $1.3 billion, and I'm hopeful that the federal government, through the permanent public transit funding, will be able to put its share into this. The second part of our action on climate change is the Rouge National Urban Park, which is the model for the rest of Canada, and I know that we will build on this as we build parks, national parks in other urban centers, including Windsor, Saskatoon, and places like Halifax. Madam Speaker, I would like to acknowledge and really reflect on the recent findings in Kamloops and in other graves around, children's graves around the country. It is something that is heartbreaking, something that requires a collective effort on all of our parts, something that requires us to double down on the 94 calls to action, but also to commit to ensuring that we have truth, accountability, and justice, and it's something that we absolutely need to move forward on to ensure that those survivors, those who need closure, we'll be able to get it through an interlocutor and in any other supports that can be provided by the federal government. In closing, Madam Speaker, there's a lot more in the speech from the throne, but I do want to commit to continuing to collaborate with my colleagues across the aisle, and I want to make sure that, like yesterday, like the historical vote that we had yesterday, I hope that we're able to work together to better the lives of Canadians, to make sure that justice exists for those survivors of residential schools, and also to make sure that we move towards a path of reconciliation. I look forward to questions and answers, Madam Speaker. Thank you for this opportunity.